All right, so this first slide is pretty much, I think, things that we've already kind of been saying, from yesterday and whatnot, where you want to make sure you're conveying ideas about yourself. Don't fall into that trap of, well, I'll just write what I think they want to hear, because then you're really kind of taking your personal, identity concept away from it. So certainly you don't have to write the essay that's charming the university and explaining how wonderful they are. But also, I wouldn't fall into the trap of taking a concept. So, like, a couple of years ago, evils of terrorism was certainly a big one. It still is today. Personal commitment involved in being a doctor. Don't write about a topic because you feel like you're supposed to write about that kind of topic. So if say, and I'm not trying to dissuade you from writing about any of these issues. Prompt number 4 is the one where you would solve a problem. I wouldn't want someone to go, I'm going to do prompt number 4, and I'm going to try to tackle the issues of immigration in the U.S. because right now that's the big topic of the day. Don't choose the topic just because that is the topic du jour. Now, if it's something that you fervently have beliefs about, and that's a big part of who you are, by all means, go ahead and write it. But I don't want you to select something just because I feel like that's what I'm supposed to write. I feel like this phrase can kind of scare some people where you bring something new to the table. That does not mean that you have to be the only person to write about this certain idea. I'm going to successfully, split the atom within a 15-minute time period in my local high school. It's not that you have to be the only person who's going to come up with the idea. Bringing something new to the table can be taking a common concept, a common experience, but it's providing a twist, new insight, new perspective to it that otherwise they may not read or normally get. Comparison kind of for me would be, and no offense to like your last set of TWAs or anything like that, they get a little dull to read after a while. Because it's the same argument, like your prompt that you guys did for Slaughterhouse-5, there was kind of some variation to it. First period did one about, is Slaughterhouse-5 worthy? Should it be taught in high schools, or is it too vulgar, obscene? And Emma was working on that one. Every single person who wrote it said, yeah, it's worthy literature. It should be allowed to be taught. It's kind of be nice to have one go, no, I don't think so. And not that it becomes a personal attack on how dare you make me read this book in school, but it's nice to see some differing opinions. Now, certainly, if you have folks who are writing about the same issue, but someone brings a different perspective to it or looks at it through a different lens, that can kind of resonate with the reader where, oh, this is another person who got cut from their, junior high soccer team. Wait a minute, now they're doing something different with it than those other folks. That can have a pretty lasting, powerful, successful impact. So new to the table doesn't mean that you have to be the only person to write about something. It also doesn't mean make up a scenario, because I don't think that usually works well. I think that people can generally tell when that just doesn't sound truthful. And to be honest, they're not going to call you up, Grant, did this really happen to you? If they don't think that it is, valid, legitimate, then I don't think it's real. Nope, not going to count that one. Off it goes into the dismissed pile. So I would not make stuff up, and don't feel like you have to be the only person to write about, because that gets to be a little bit, too much on the plate. But I think the big thing, don't go overboard with the flattery when it comes to the school. I've always dreamed of going to NYU. New York City is where I want to spend the rest of my life. You give me the wonderful opportunity of academics and culture. Who wouldn't want to go to NYU and spend $80,000 a year? This one we mentioned, although it does kind of look like me, especially after cutting hair. I should have kept patches on the side. Remember, it's not the professors, it's not the dean of admissions, it's probably the kid in cargo shorts and Birkenstocks that's reading your essay, that is working there as a grad student. So don't write to that crowd or to that stereotype. Write more of who you are. This is one that I do get a little concerned about. Make sure that you are not being offensive. And I don't mean McMurphy speech or anything like those. I'm not overly concerned that you will do that. Don't test it, I guess. All Americans are conforming cowards. No one else in my school really puts in the effort that I do. Those kinds of things come across as being condescending. So don't elevate yourself by dismissing others, I guess would be a good way of going about it. You can certainly highlight the effort, the hard work, the interest, all those attributes that you have, but don't feel like you have to push other people down in order to elevate yourself. Don't be offensive. If any part of you goes, that might be taken as being offensive, it probably is, and I would find a way to reword it. So just make sure you're not pushing down the masses in order to try to make yourself look better. This one we already talked about. Don't write the resume. They already know all those things about you, whether it's GPA, SAT, sports, activities, honors bands, and all that kind of stuff that you've been a part of. That'll go into the application. Now, if there's an experience with it that Nina has had with basketball, or that one day that Amira overcame the wind gusts to do the pole vault, you can still certainly write about the experience, even though it's known, but you're providing insight that would otherwise not be known just by looking at the statistics and those measurables and all that kind of stuff. But you don't have to go into, I was first chair violin in 4th grade. I won the science fair in 7th grade. I didn't miss a spelling word in all of 2nd or 3rd grade, all those kinds of things. There's no reason to list every single attribute that has gone along the way. Again, though, if there was some time where there was an activity or a project, an assignment that ends up being a defining moment in who you are, go ahead and write about it, but don't feel the need that you have to summarize all the other stuff. If you get a 1600 on the SAT, I'd maybe work that in. I got a 1600. Accepted.
I don't think you'd have to ask them to.
I'm overcoming that obstacle of that 15, 20, and
Like the top 25% of people have a 16. Oh my god.
25%.
Something like that.
And I mean, in all seriousness, too, just because you're mentioning Harvard, there's when we talked about yesterday, the schools that you can get into. I think I can, the reach schools. Also have some moments of clarity and logic and reasoning. So should the schools that they actually want me, I can go there. Is it worth it? And a big part of that's financial. Is it worth it to spend that amount of money for whatever particular degree and whatnot you're going for? Something that is starting to become a little bit more common, and I know specifically North Hill students are taking advantage of it. Schools will go, you're accepted, but we want you to start in the spring. We have too many students coming in the fall. I think some folks go, well, if you don't want me then, no, I'm not coming. At the same time, if you are able to start in the spring semester, you can go to CCAC, take some classes cheaper. They tend to transfer, and you find out which ones will transfer. Some folks will still have a job, so you can still build up some money. And so if you're able to go in, to Pitt or whatever school as a second semester freshman, some are even be able to kind of in some ways knock out most of that freshman year in that CCAC semester going as a sophomore, you're saving yourself a ton of money. You're also saving on living expenses if you're still staying at home. So those are certainly things that you want to take a look at. Private, state, public schools, there does tend to be a price difference that goes along with it. So, look at loans. Compounding interest is a real thing. So when you're kind of signing off on that $50,000 student loan, in actuality, you're probably paying back $200,000, could be $250,000, depending on how the interest is going and all that stuff. So those would be things to consider. I think I mentioned to you yesterday, we have a lot of folks going to Akron, Kent State because of them taking the AP credits. Schools that are going to accept those things, that really becomes a bonus for you and something to take into consideration. If you're taking CHS psychology and all those things senior year, hey, taking it, may as well get the credit for it and see if it works. But just do your double checking, get your confirmation letters that yes, they're going to accept those credits and all that stuff, so you don't assume that you are going to get something that you don't. So, this whole idea we said about during my junior year, I played first singles on the tennis team, served on the student council, maintained a B average, traveled to France, and worked at a cheese factory. Not all that stuff's going to go into one essay. Mr. Franks worked in an ice cream factory. He has wonderful ice cream factory stories. Should you take APOC next? There you go. Now, could one of these things be something you still write about? Absolutely, but you're just not going to throw all of them into there. So you want to go with things, hey, scooping ice cream at Brewster's. You want to focus on specific ideas, whether it be a strange meal, religious service, whatever the case may be. go into something specific as opposed to just a general broad thing. Essays about your family, your trip to France, extracurricular activities can be effective so long as they're specific, but you're not going to be able to cover that whole trip or that whole activity and whatnot. So it's what's the moment from those events, those activities that ends up being that story that you want to get across. We talked about the 650 words, so be economical with your words. This may not seem like a big idea, but if I'm going from in society to today and I can change it to now, I'm going to change it to now. That saved me 2 words. If taking out some to be verbs is going to help me and save some words, I'm going to do that so that if I have switched that to now, I've taken out some to be verbs, maybe I've given myself an extra 13 words, big whoop, that could be that other sentence that you weren't going to be able to get before. So those would be certainly things to consider. I didn't do a word count for this one, but over the years it's been pointed out to me by my parents, friends, and teachers, and I've even noticed this about myself as well, that I am not the neatest person in the world. How could we restate this?
I am not the neatest person.
I'm a slob. 3 words. So, do I need all of these words to get my point across? That's the big question that you're going to be asking yourself, throughout. Cliches, whether you want to write these down or take a picture with your phone, does not matter, but I would take a look at these things. Cutting edge maybe doesn't get used as much anymore, although, cutting edge technology, I guess, maybe could be. Come on, you can do it. You can do it. Slowly. There we go. But things like, I learned my lesson, or I always learn from my mistakes, I know my dreams will come true if I work hard enough, I can make a difference, so-and-so is my passion, or whatever. I'm not going to take, loved ones or certain things for granted. I realize the value of hard work and perseverance. These are the things that people tend to overuse. And it's not that these are bad concepts to write about. They certainly can give you some good concepts and whatnot. But I think the sentences that people struggle with are the first 3 and 4 and the last 3 or 4. How do I start? How do I finish? When people aren't sure what to do, that's when you kind of fall back into that college essay jargon cliche kind of concept. So this isn't don't judge a book by its cover. You certainly don't want to put that in there as well. But these kind of end up becoming the phrases that the readers come back to over and over again. So it's not the taking away from the value of what you're writing about, but you don't want to put it in the same way, the same words that folks are using over and over again. If they come across too much of this stuff, the message pretty much becomes you don't have anything significant to say, so you're just going to kind of put it into those little pre-packaged statements. So certainly you can realize the value of hard work and perseverance, but tell us about it. Go into detail about it, as opposed to kind of just summarizing it in that manner, in that method. Examples then of how those cliches kind of come across. As I finished the race, as Keith is doing right now, I realized I had learned the value of hard work and appreciated the fact that I could accomplish anything if I set my mind to it. That's where you kind of have that double cliche that's starting to take place. So those would be ways that folks kind of fall into the trap of using those statements over and over and over. We got a Mountain Dew shirt today. Well, I know, but you're like, you're one with the cap. I think he's crossed over onto your side of the desk. I think we need to get the mask tape out. Oh yeah, we'll just stay here. Quote for a quote's sake. When it comes to an introduction, you don't need to take famous line that a person has said just to kind of start off your essay. If Jesse wants to start off with the Stalin quote, then his whole essay better be about some kind of significance of the Stalin quote. Don't misrepresent the Stalin quote where you talk about the wonders of democracy by starting off with your Stalin quote. I mentioned to you in the past, Common App has had essays where they talk about or ask you to write about a person who's had a significant impact on your life. They've taken that one out, but you could certainly still do it for prompt number 7. They used to have one where they were, it was take a line from a book, or a song, or just like an aphorism, a wise saying, fortune cookie saying if you want, and explain the impact of it. If you're going to include a quote, make sure that quote is the basis of the essay and is an important integral part of it. Don't include it just to have an attention grabber or a hook coming in from an outside source. So, if the words of John Lennon from your favorite Beatles song has really played a big role in who you are, or So It Goes has forever changed your life, fine. But don't use it just for the sake of having a quote. If you only have 650 words, you may as well make sure that those are going to be your own words, because that's what's going to be overall most effective, since you have such a limit with what you're able to include. So don't just simply include the quote because you feel that a quote should be there. Oh, slow, there we go. Maybe. We're going at like 2G speed here. The prepackaged, predictable, generic statements, I chose Slippery Rock because Slippery Rock is committed to learning and I want to learn. Learning is important. Redundant, generic, begging the question, circular reasoning, all that kind of stuff. So don't go into that prepackaged kind of thing. Again, this would kind of fall into those cliches that folks tend to write about. The other thing, and Heath kind of had his eyes opened, I think, yesterday to the Shift F7 reference that I made when it comes to writing in a document, which it looks like we're stuck again. So don't automate because you think the big word is going to be the better word. As a writer, you're going to be effective not because you're using the lengthiest word or the biggest word, but because you're using the appropriate word. So just because it's a fancy sounding word doesn't mean that's going to be natural wheelhouse, and that's the way that you naturally are going to write. That's one thing. But if you're changing the way that you write in order for the admission officers to go, hey, this is the kind of writing that we're looking for at that time. So they can tell a Roget thesaurus from a high school student or whatever. And usually, if you start substituting in words that you're getting as suggestions, it's not always going to match up the right way. They could have an adjective where you need a noun, a verb where you should be having an adverb, and it could end up certainly give yourself kind of a clunky sounding essay. So you're a good writer, go with the best words, not necessarily going to be the biggest ones, and I think kind of us doing the peer editing is certainly going to help with those things. But we're looking for powerful ideas, not necessarily just powerful words that are going to sound fancy to everyone. However, at the same time, don't go over crazy with your slang. So we're not going to go, LOL, JK. You're not going to do the first emoji essay. Sadly, it probably wouldn't be the first emoji essay. I bet someone's probably done one, but meh. Whatevs. So words vary a lot, cool, awesome, nice, things like that. It kind of starts to get a little too colloquial. We want it to sound like you, but you're still trying to get into academic institution. There's still an academic basis behind it. They're still expecting that you are going to be studious and you're presenting yourself as a soon-to-be full-fledged adult. So you want the ideas to kind of come across that way. Don't plagiarize, 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 don't plagiarize. Don't plagiarize, Nina, or Emma, or Zach. Here's repeating. Don't plagiarize the essay where you're talking about the value of hard work and honesty. That one ticked me off. Like, really? You're going to submit that and it's not even yours?
Maybe it's just
Yeah, I don't think so. And sadly, there's enough websites out there that, hey, free college essays for a small fee of $19.95 plus convenience fee. Don't go about doing, certainly that route as well. And here's the other thing with it too. Admissions people generally, they can tell, and if they think that essay is not legitimate, it's not yours, they're just going to go, nope, dead on arrival, it doesn't count. And they're not going to call you up and go, Jesse, it looked like you plagiarized. That's why you're not accepted. It's just like, yep, nope, sorry, he's in the, do not admit file. It's kind of like your AP prompts. There's no conversation that's going to take place as to this is why you got the score, or this is why you didn't get admitted, and things like that. And so that's kind of really along the same ways. Even though it's not plagiarizing, I wouldn't make stuff up. Because if it has that feel of not being genuine or authentic, then you're going to get, suffer the consequences for it. So make sure you certainly don't go that. Don't recycle your essays. Now, Common App you kind of are, because you're sending out one essay to multiple places. But if you have schools that are going to be not using Common App, but they have their own essay prompts, a lot of schools it kind of overlaps a little bit. So Duke and Northwestern, I don't know if they still do, but for a long time had a similar prompt, though there were some slight nuances to it. I don't remember the exact wording anymore. It's been too long. But a person from Duke could go, that's the Northwestern essay, or vice versa. So if they're not going to give me the time to actually write their own original essay for our specific school, we're not really going to take the time to consider them as an applicant and a student for our school and move on to the other. So certainly make sure you don't, copy paste one to the other. They're going to notice. Plus, you don't want to fall in the trap where you're accidentally, telling Harvard that you can't wait, or telling UMass that you can't wait to wear your Harvard sweatshirt. I don't think UMass is going to take too kindly to that, and you're probably going into the we're not going to accept that person, pile at that point. Make sure you proofread. Typos, spelling, grammatical errors. Either they'll just go, boy, this person doesn't have it, or they're too careless. So you don't want to have simple little things like forgetting your I before the NG, being your reason not to get admitted. Nor do you want to rely solely on spell checker. So, graduated from high school, plan to work for a nonprofit organization during summer. I don't know why the H thing. It's never happened before, but then it's a simple college essay. It's to the point. Highlights values. I don't need to be the capital letter. I'm perfectly fine just kind of doing my role as a lowercase. From that day on, Daniel was my best friend. Poor Daniel. Don't do that. I don't know this. I bet one of the more commonly misspelled words in college application essays. College. I have a feeling that I can't, I'm looking forward to collage or going to your colleague. Which, So look over those things to make sure that you don't want to give them ammunition to not.
Yeah, that just.
Now keep in mind, if you have one spelling error, one grammatical error, no, I don't think that is going to automatically remove you from going to that school. But what your college essay is doing for you, in theory, is it's helping your application for those schools that you might be a little bit on the bubble, or it might be helping you for that financial assistance. So that's where you're trying to get the benefit of those things for those schools. So if you do have that spelling error, while it's not keeping you from ever going to college, in some ways it could be theoretically kind of eliminating you from getting into some of the schools you're hoping to get to. And if you're advocating, hey, this is why it's so important to me, but you're not going to proofread and go through all those little things, that's something that they're certainly going to take into consideration. So for Thursday, we're taking a look at, you're going to bring in a typed copy, paper copy of one of the 6 prompts. Should you go with number 7, make sure you're letting us know what it is. If you don't want to use a Common App essay because you have another school or scholarship form or whatever essay that you want to use, that's fine. But make sure you let us know what are the requirements for it, whether it's a separate word count, a character count, so that we can give you feedback of what's going to work best for it. If you have like a 300-word essay, those ones are tricky to do, or 350, because it is not a lot of space. But let us know that so that we don't go, how come you didn't write anything? You only have 250 words. I was only allowed 250 words. That's certainly going to be a little bit of a game changer for it. Okay. I don't know if 2 words. They usually don't go below 300. I feel like someone had like 2, where it was almost like a series of short answer statements that they wanted, or it might have been like 250. But anything shorter than that, you're not going to be able to really get significance in it whatsoever. The character thing is kind of tough because hey, you could be typing it online. Once you hit that final character, you're done. Now you can go back and edit, and revise some things, but it's a pretty steadfast. Hey, here we are. And again, I think we mentioned yesterday. You got a lot of people applying to the schools, so in some ways they're looking for ways to weed folks out. And if Chandler's going to write 653 words, hey, he didn't do what he was supposed to, so we're not going to consider that one as much as we're going to focus on all those other ones. So keep all those things in mind for it. We'll look at some sample essays on Tuesday. I think for the most part, you'll probably be finding some critical aspects of them, which is fine. And then Wednesday, you'll have some time with laptops to work on them, and then we'll go from Thursday to Friday so that you can submit. All right. Nina, the big thing with it was your final due date is the 29th, which is a Monday. But if you submitted a day earlier, you get 5 bonus points. So some folks are going with that. It's the 28th deadline. That's up to you. Definitely. Okay. You're earning 5 fewer points. You're not losing.
But you could get 5 more inches.
Yes, you can. So you do not get 10 points for submitting 2 days early, or I'm going to submit tomorrow and I'll get 50 bonus points. I'm good to go. I'm going to submit my
That would be a
essay.
good loophole.
It would be a theoretical one that does not exist for us. So
Ou turn it up, I can say I